Sweet Home Season 3 is finally here. At the end of Season 2, Hyun-su was gravely wounded after his intense battle with the monstrous Yi-kyung, allowing the dark personality inside him to seize control. Just when it seemed like this dark version of Hyun-su would unleash his full power, he was suddenly headbutted back to normal by Eun-hyeok. The dark persona, who had finally taken over, was forced to relinquish control once again to Hyun-su's original self. Meanwhile, the true identity of the monster possessing Sang-wook was finally revealed. It was actually Sang-won, the very first experimental subject and the husband Yi-kyung had been desperately searching for. Back during the experiments, Dr. Lim had deliberately called Yi-kyung in front of Sang-won, hoping the emotional shock would awaken the monster within him. The plan worked. Dr. Lim's experiment was a success, and Sang-won became the first human capable of transforming into a monster and taking over others. Now, Sang-won has tracked down Dr. Lim, who assumes he's here to get revenge. But to Dr. Lim's surprise, Sang-won doesn't hate him. In fact, he's grateful. To Sang-won, Dr. Lim was the one who introduced him to a whole new world. Now, Sang-won wants to use Dr. Lim to create more beings like himself, humans who can control their inner monsters, just like him and Hyun-su. Sang-won takes Dr. Lim to a hidden research facility where they're keeping subject number 3, along with 2 other humans who have also transformed into monsters. Subject number 3 hopes to recreate the process that turned them by using the same method to trigger the birth of a new human species. Their next test subjects are the squad of soldiers who broke into the lab at the end of Season 2. They hang 3 of the soldiers from the ceiling and make the 4th one choose one person to save, trying to see if the fear of death will awaken the monster inside. But with just a glance, Dr. Lim can already tell this experiment is doomed to fail. There must be more than just fear involved. A specific unknown condition must also be met. Sang-won and subject number 3 briefly consider this, then lose interest in continuing the experiment. Before leaving, Sang-won instructs one of the monstrous girls to get rid of them, but instead of obeying, the girl hesitates and ends up helping the soldiers when they can no longer hold on. Elsewhere, Hyun-su and Eun-hyeok arrive at the deep underground abyss where Yi-kyung is hiding. During their previous fight, Hyun-su accidentally awakened a new ability, something like mind reading. He realizes that Yi-kyung hasn't been fully consumed by the monster yet, and if he can reach her and wake her up, she could become a new kind of human, just like him. With that hope in mind, Hyun-su approaches the unconscious Yi-kyung and uses his ability to enter her mind. Inside, Yi-kyung is being manipulated by the monster within her, and because Hyun-su is intruding on her mental world, if she kills him in there, he'll die for real.
That's the monster you created. She was born this way because of you, and now she's killing people at random. You think that's okay? Even though she might kill your real child this time? Just kill her. Get a grip! That thing is trying to hurt you!
Above ground, Eun-hyeok encounters 2 former comrades they once fought alongside. But before they can reunite properly, the sound of an engine draws a monster toward them, and they're forced to use a car as cover, playing a deadly game of hide and seek. But if things kept going like this, the monster would find them sooner or later. Just then, a scream from Yi-kyung echoed from below, drawing the monster down with it. Seizing the moment, Eun-hyeok and Chan-young leap into the abyss as well. While Hyun-su is trying to wake Yi-kyung, he must not be interrupted, so it's up to them to hold off the monster. But the creature is far too powerful, and despite their best efforts, they can only buy a little time. When things get desperate, Chan-young lifts Eun-hyeok to safety while he stays behind.
hurry, let's go! Who you see is not your child. Your real child is waiting for you. We gotta get out of here. Let's go.
No.
Right now! We gotta go, come on!
I can't.
Let's go!
Luckily, Hyun-su wakes up just in time. It turns out Sang-won had already seen Yi-kyung before. He had personally witnessed her unborn child begin to mutate, and even implanted a mysterious seed inside the baby, so he could find her later. To carry out his plan for a new human domination, Sang-won needed his daughter's power, and he could sense that she was just ahead, near the stadium. And he's right. The girl has just arrived at the shelter beneath the stadium. She slips through the crowd and finds a secluded spot, where she sees two boys bullying another. The boy being bullied refuses to back down and mutters, "I want to become a monster."
Just you wait! I'll get you back for this! I'll become a monster! I'm gonna kill you.
The girl decides to grant his wish, but just as she's about to transform him, his sister shows up and interrupts her.
Just put up with it for today. Let's go. Oh God, who is that? Come on. Are you coming? Hey!
The girl follows them back to the dormitory, where a kind, older woman doesn't question her identity, but offers her a place to stay the night and promises to help her find her mother the next day. The girl thought she would be safe staying here, but she didn't expect Sang-won to find the place so quickly. She sensed his presence and hurried out.
Are you okay?
I can hear a sound. Someone keeps calling me.
The girl with Sang-won extended countless tentacles to defeat the soldiers, but she didn't take their lives. Afterward, Sang-won ordered Sergeant Tak to gather everyone together.
Gather them all the children. My child. I know they're here.
Subject number 3 treated the wounded soldiers, then addressed everyone through the loudspeaker to restructure the current refugee system.
So we may all have a happy ending. Crow Platoon will all be treated equally to the other survivors. The current policy prohibiting survivors from leaving the premises remains unchanged, with no added restrictions. However, better conditions will be made for symptomatic individuals. The aforementioned rules will not apply to individuals who are symptomatic. You may all move around freely and live your lives however you may please. You no longer need to hide your symptoms. Monsterization is a blessing and the first step in your evolution into becoming neo-humans.
Before long, Dr. Lim arrived in front of Sergeant Tak. In the previous season, he too had become infected, but Dr. Lim had helped him suppress the monster inside, allowing him to become one of the new humans. Meanwhile, Yi-kyung finally woke up, but Hyun-su had fallen into a deep sleep. Knowing her daughter has the power to create monsters, Yi-kyung knew she had to stop her. She remembered the stadium being the only place her daughter was familiar with, so she rushed there immediately. But no sooner had Yi-kyung left than disaster struck. Ho-sang, who had been taking care of Hani, began to mutate. When Hani discovered this, she panicked and ran straight to Hyun-su's room, unknowingly triggering a change in the sleeping Hyun-su. Hani knew that Hyun-su had the power to turn monsters back into humans, which is why she desperately tried to wake him. Screams from Ho-sang rang out from outside and Hani rushed out in a panic. At the same time, Yoon-yu told Chan-young to help Hani, while she stayed behind to try and wake up the out-of-control Hyun-su. Hani finally reached Ho-sang. They once made a promise: if either of them turned into a monster first, the other would be the one to end it. But now that the moment had come, Hani couldn't bring herself to do it. Ho-sang began losing control, slamming his foot on the gas pedal and crashing into another car. In his final moments, Ho-sang regained consciousness, but he died in the explosion. The sound of the explosion drew in more monsters, and while the others fought desperately to hold them off, Hyun-su finally woke up. But the Hyun-su that emerged was his dark persona.
Hyun-su, wait! Where are you going? Please don't leave me. Please don't.
It's so damn noisy.
This marked a high-energy turning point in Sweet Home Season 3. Hyun-su encountered the resurrected giant again and took him down in just a few swift moves.
Are you one of us then? It's been a while since we had a new face.
I'm not a pathetic lab rat like you and your friends.
Elsewhere, Seo-jin, who had narrowly escaped death, happened to discover the barely alive Eun-hyeok. Eun-hyeok's face was badly disfigured, but when he saw a living human, he begged Seo-jin to take him somewhere. Once they arrived, Eun-hyeok instructed Seo-jin not to leave this place no matter what. As long as he stayed obedient, the monsters wouldn't dare come near. And with those final words, Eun-hyeok ended his own life right in front of Seo-jin. Before Seo-jin could even process what had happened, a monster suddenly appeared. He raised his gun, ready to fight back, but the monster stopped in its tracks and instead knelt before Eun-hyeok's body in reverence. Then, from Eun-hyeok's corpse, countless tentacles emerged and wrapped around him, encasing him inside a massive cocoon. Meanwhile, Yi-kyung arrived safely at the stadium and found Dr. Limit. From him, she learned Sang-won's true intentions. To prove he was telling the truth, Dr. Lim had Yi-kyung hide and listen secretly before Sang-won arrived.
But I gotta ask someone. Aren't you curious about Seo Yi-kyung? She's the mother of your child.
I told you we met up. Not just once either. We met several times. I realized after my memories returned. Green home. Maybe I went there because of her. I didn't recognize her at the time. But maybe I wanted to see her. I'm just glad that I didn't kill her then. Because now I can meet my child.
If what you're saying is true, that she survived and gave birth, then the child wouldn't even be a year old yet. There aren't any children that young here. So what makes you think you'll find them?
When I last saw her, Yi-kyung was already at full term.
So you're telling me that she got pregnant and gave birth within a matter of hours? How is that possible?
This child's a special being that I created. It will soon reach a state of absolute perfection. And I'll use it as my next vessel. I need you to find a way for me to leave this body.
The children in the shelter had already gathered together, and before long Sang-won appeared and, sensing the presence of the seed, immediately found the girl. Yi-kyung, watching from above, saw everything unfold with her own eyes.
Do you need me?
I've been waiting a long time for this.
The next morning, Sang-won led the girl out of the stadium to test her abilities. At the same time, Hyun-su's dark personality woke up again. It turned out that last night, just as Hyun-su was about to kill Chan-young, Yoon-yu injected him with 2 doses of tranquilizer, narrowly pulling them out of danger. But the effects of the tranquilizer wore off quickly, and the revived dark Hyun-su began walking toward Yoon-yu, who stood her ground without a hint of fear.
You can't kill me, can you? You weren't trying to spare me. But you just can't kill me. Thought you could do whatever you wanted, but turns out you can't. Am I wrong?
Stop it.
Hyun-su, come with me now. You've got nothing better to do. Hyun-su, please come with me.
While the group was resting along the way, Hani suddenly suffered a seizure. Seeing this, Yoon-yu told Hani to wait while she went to find medicinal herbs. But just as Yoon-yu was searching, the girl suddenly activated her power. She placed her hand on the ground, whispered a few words, and the massive brute from Season 1 rose from beneath the earth. Then, from the distance, an unexpected visitor appeared, a man from Sang-won's team who couldn't resist the temptation and had secretly followed them. The giant had already spotted Eun-hyeok, but at the critical moment, the dark Hyun-su stepped in and took him down in just a few swift moves. He coldly severed the man's right hand.
Where's Jang Im-yeong? Where's that bastard hiding?
The stadium! The stadium! It's not too far from here.
How's he doing in that awful body of his? Is he doing okay?
I want it work.
He was stuck in there, unable to get out of it.
He'll make it out soon. I know it.
I suppose that's enough.
The girl followed Sang-won back to the stadium, and the first thing she did was take back the baseball and glove from those two bullies. On her way back to the dorm, Yi-kyung suddenly appeared and pulled her into a hug. Yi-kyung apologized for everything she had done and sincerely repented, saying she wanted to take her daughter away and told her she would wait by the air vent. If the girl wanted to leave, she should come find her. Meanwhile, after a full day of incubation, Eun-hyeok was reborn from the cocoon.
You waited patiently and you weren't foolish. No matter what I say, most people don't listen. I've seen many die trying to run away. Meaning you.
It turns out the cocoon-like structure was actually their heart, and once they returned to it, they could be resurrected. Eun-hyeok had previously undergone monster transformation, but in the end, he was reborn through his heart. He once went to Sang-won looking for something, but not only did he fail to find it, Sang-won killed him. Later, Sang-won witnessed the entire process of their transformation into hearts. Infected beings like Eun-hyeok are at their most vulnerable when returning to the heart. Sang-won didn't kill them all because he was looking for a quick way to eliminate them, and that meant finding where Eun-hyeok and the others were hiding.
The special infectees headed to the stadium. If they were looking for your home, why would they go there?
They probably had another motive.
You keep on saying us. Are there a lot of neo-humans like you?
How many people do you think have become monsters? It's only a matter of time now, before we're all neo-human. Take me to the stadium.
Tell me what the special infectees are afraid of first.
Beings like us. Neo-humans.
At the same time, the girl returned the baseball to the boy, then went to Yi-kyung. But just as they were about to leave, Sang-won suddenly appeared, trying to rekindle past emotions to deceive Yi-kyung, only to be seen through immediately. Sang-won extended his tentacles and dragged the girl back. Yi-kyung begged Sang-won to possess her instead, but he refused. She was no longer of any use.
You need to go, Yi-su. Is that my name? I'm sorry for keeping your name from you. I'm so sorry.
Yi-kyung died right in front of her daughter's eyes. Because it was Hyun-su who had turned her from a monster back into a human, Yi-kyung no longer had the conditions to be resurrected. Elsewhere, Hyun-su and Eun-hyeok met again on a bus.
You gonna help me out or what? You think I'll let you walk all over me like Chao Hyun-su did?
You'll have to. And there's nothing you can do about it. It'd be a good idea to start rethinking your attack plan.
During their fight, the man took advantage of an opening and surrounded the entire bus with a mercury-like liquid. Hyun-su used his large wings to blast a hole for Eun-hyeok to escape, while he remained trapped inside. Just then, Eun-hyeok ran over and reunited with her brother. but Eun-hyeok's reaction shocked her. According to him, though the new human version of himself still retained memories, he had lost all emotions. So even as Yoon-yu wept with grief, Eun-hyeok remained completely unmoved. Sometime later, Hyun-su managed to break free, and when he reappeared, he had returned to normal. While he was trapped, the dark Hyun-su had merged with him, breaking through the barrier and allowing him to escape. Meanwhile, Sang-won locked the girl away and approached Dr. Lim to ask how to initiate the transfer. Dr. Lim told him to recall what his body felt like each time he transferred, and eventually they concluded that the transfer only occurred when Sang-won was facing a life-or-death crisis. Everyone in the shelter moved all flammable materials to an open area outside. Sang-won was planning to stage a self-immolation. While he prepared, the young boy found where Yi-su was being held, but his small body wasn't strong enough to rescue her. At that moment, Yi-su stood up, walked to the boy, took his hand, and said she would fulfill his wish to become a monster. Sometime later, when one of Sang-won's followers arrived, Yi-su was already gone. Yi-su had used her power to create a group of infected beings and was ready to battle Sang-won. But Sang-won appeared first, killing the boy-turned-monster and the older woman right in front of Yi-su. The older woman had once thanked Sang-won because Sang-wook had risked his life in Sweet Home to bring her daughter's body back to her. Sang-won imprisoned Yi-su again, and subject number 3 dragged her to the fire pit. But before the body swap could happen, he executed Dr. Limits. Sang-won had never forgotten that it was Dr. Lim who turned him into a monster, and he knew all along that Dr. Lim had been using him. Dr. Lim died in regret. He had dreamed of becoming a monster, but luck never sided with him. After Dr. Lim's death, Sang-won immediately executed subject number Moondrum. He then connected with Yi-su and stepped into the fire. By dusk, Hyun-su and Eun-hyeok arrived at the stadium. At first, Hyun-su didn't realize Yi-su had been possessed until Sang-won brought her to the fire and revealed himself. Hyun-su, who had the power to awaken others, entered Yi-su's inner world and found her bound inside. But before he could save her, Sang-won appeared. Sang-won thought victory was within reach, but Eun-hyeok's arrival shattered that illusion.
You still don't get it? The special infectee. It's right there.
I can't kill her like that.
You're not able to?
I won't kill her. Either fight me or do what I say.
It's your fault we didn't finish the job.
Did you really think that would work?
No, not yet. Just give me a little more time. I'm gonna force him out.
Can you really do it? I'm not acting alone anymore.
Hyun-su battled the other monsters fiercely with his wings, while Eun-hyeok pointed a sharp object directly at Sang-won. Just as Sang-won was about to strike, Yi-su disrupted his mind and took control. Yi-su's body was pierced and she died in Hyun-su's arms. And Sang-won once again took on the appearance of Sang-wook, but unfortunately, Sang-wook's will was still present. He dragged his body into the fire, taking Sang-won down with him. At the end of the story, Eun-hyeok and Hyun-su returned to the old Sweet Home, where they saw Yoon-yu on the rooftop, now transformed into one of the new humans.